Okay, welcome to Exploring Art Mediums. It's been a while. It just seems like it's been more than just 4 weeks, doesn't it? Might have been 5 by the time it rolls around. Anyway, it seems like a long time since we've been together. Tonight, we're going to be painting negative trees, and it's going to be a fun, very loose kind of, I don't know, experience in trying to find shapes and shadows and using our palette knife to carve some things, but mostly just finding those trees that are hidden in a splatter of work that we're doing. So to begin with, you're going to want to have a paper taped down. Okay, so if you're just joining us, we are going to be using a straw tonight. So if you have one, fine. If you don't, that's fine. You can just blow on it, you know, get real close to the paint and blow. And our colors, we're actually going to really concentrate on yellow, orange, red, and blue, but then we might use some browns and greens. So it's just kind of primary colors mostly, and then we might bring in this yellow, the bright yellow, maybe some brown or something. So let's get started. So what we're going to do is we're going to wet a big section, but not wet it edge to edge. We're just going to wet kind of in the middle. If you have a big brush, you can use a big brush, or you can just use your biggest round brush. What we're going to do is just wet the middle. And just kind of in a crosshatch kind of messy way. We don't really want any rhyme or reason at this point. Okay. And that's enough water right there. Then we're going to start with our yellow. We're going to start with our lightest color, and then we're going to add orange to that, and then red. And we're going to get it really drippy and sloppy. And so go ahead and loosen up your colors, and you're just going to drop, and you're going to paint, but mostly just drop. And I'm not filling it in. Obviously, I'm leaving lots of white because we're going to have lots of colors. Okay. While that's still wet, we're going to have to try to dump some orange on there too. And we don't want to go in the same spots. We just want to enhance it. Now, while these are still wet, and we've got lots of marks, you're going to take your paint. Well, let me do the red first. We're going to take our straw and we're going to make some drastic lines. Okay, so see, I've got the yellow, the orange, and the red. And now I'm going to do up. And you're going to blow it hard enough to make lines. Because what we're looking for is lines for branches and different grasses. And you can do it every which way. You can turn it around. Now I'm going to start adding some blue onto that. I'm going to mix a little bit of the blue with yellow in like you can either do it in a lid or an extra little plate. And what you want is a bit of a green. It's like we're mixing our own green. And then I'm going to mix it. And then I'm going to shake that everywhere too. And then I'm going to just do some plain blue, ultramarine blue, or Windsor blue, whatever you've got. It's very strong, so you don't need a lot. Now I'm going to blow that, the green and the blue that I haven't blown with my straw yet. So what we're actually creating is branches and roots and things. So underneath this paper, this picture is this, okay? We're building off the trees off of this, okay? And everybody's looks different, and you're gonna define your trees wherever you would like. Now, if your paper, if your splashes are still wet, what I want you to do is take a paper towel, cover the whole thing, and blot it. Okay, so now that lightens it, but what it's gonna do is gonna allow us to start painting right away, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a look at our paper. Now, it could be either way that you want to end up with your trees. And I think I'm gonna go this way because I have less down here. I think I have, these look more like roots to me, and this has more tree-like. So what we're gonna do is take our pencil and we're gonna try to figure out where we want our tree. I can see right now, I have a really strong V right here. So I think I want one of my trees to be big right through there. You're gonna have to look at your splashes and see where you want your trees to be. You're gonna take your pencil and you're just gonna draw. And when you get to the really light part, you can leave that blank because we're gonna come back in. And if you have a pencil mark on it, it's really hard to get it off. But I can see my trunk, just gonna go down here to the roots. So try to find one or two big trees. And okay, I'm gonna draw this really dark just for the sake for you guys to see it, because I think it's important for you to see what I'm drawing. But I'm really ruining it for me. Can you see my tree that I'm defining? Right here, there were one big tree here and another big tree here. And then there was one that went kind of across. And so I kind of had to use that. The rest of this was all created by negative painting, okay? So find one or two, well, we want two big trees. So that's one of my big ones. I don't have anything that looks like a tree on this side, but I'm going to make one.
Okay.
And so the only thing I can think of is this dark thing I want to use. And maybe this. So we're just going to
Background for tree.
create one.
Nice.
So I'm just gonna bring it up. And then I'm gonna go here, and then I'm gonna not go over here in the white. But I can see, I can jump over to there, and I'm gonna come down here. This is gonna be a big tree. Maybe I'll do it right there. I might thin that out. This is gonna be my second tree, okay? We're gonna add more trees over there in a minute, but right now we're gonna just work with our two trees. Now, one of you might say that, oh, I've got this branch going through right here, and I want this branch hooking onto this tree. Well, then you would kind of draw, you know, like I'll draw this dark, even though I'm not gonna do it. I can see a tree that's kind of fallen down right here, going up this way, okay? So I'm just gonna go like that for right now, okay? So that means when I paint more of this tree, I'm gonna leave this one alone because I want that its own tree. That makes sense? Okay, now this is really gonna kind of blow you away, the negative painting. Okay, so what you do is you start to paint in between your trees. If you all got your trees drawn. So again, if you look at here, this was my main tree that I identified at the beginning. I just drew lines going up. None of this green was on there. It was just kind of a very light colored tree. This tree also was one that I identified early on. And then this one over here. So you can see that you identify the trees and then we're going to paint in between these dark colors and we're going to scrape and do all sorts of stuff behind. Okay. So how we do that is we're going to do a dark mixture of a blue-green. So if you want to start making a little puddle, and I'm actually going down a size in my brush. This is a number 8. And I'm just going to make a pool of blue, green, and blue, yellow, and red actually all together, but mostly blue. And then I'm going to go in my red, which makes purple. And then we're going to get yellow mixed in there. And then stir it all up and see what you get. You might need, that's really muddy and I don't want that brown. I got too much red in there, so I'm going to get more blue. I need more blue and more yellow to get it to a green that I like. Now I'm just getting gray. Let's see if I can green it up. So to begin with, I'm going to paint, we start painting our negative things. So I'm going to start in between these two and I'm just filling it in with negative. And I'm not sure I want to fill it in completely. I want to leave, I'm going to zoom in. I want to leave some of this background color. I don't want to fill it in solid. But remember, you're still doing trees and branch-like shapes, okay? So if you're going to fill something in, do it not just a solid color. That makes sense. And we can go up above that. Okay, so while that is still wet, I want you to take your palette knife and you're just going to make a little scrape. Well, it's still too wet. Let's let it dry just a little bit. Okay, we'll come back to that. We can go over here. And we can go underneath. So let's go back to this and see if it works now. Just scrape it. That's a little bit better. As I go up, let me show you here. As I go up, there's a lot of white. but it's just too much white. My tree is going to be right here. So I want to cover this. And by painting the negative, you're able to identify the limbs. So I'm coming around. This is a branch that I want to highlight. Because at some point you have to get rid of some of the white. But right now I want to keep my white in my tree, but the background white can go away, but just be very judicious in what you take away, I guess. White means that through the background you can see through the forest and see the sunlight coming through, basically. So right now I'm gonna go over to this tree. I'm jumping over a little bit, and I'm gonna do some branches up here. I'm gonna make this tree split off. It's got a branch coming this way. Okay. I know it doesn't look like much right now. Keep with me. Keep up. What do I just make sure you believe in me, I guess. So when we get down to this area, you can add things that look more like grasses with this dark mixture. You can start going like this and do things in the woods in the bottom celestory part. If you look here, there's a bunch of little shrubs and grasses and things that I've identified down there at the base, kind of the forest floor kind of things you want to be putting down. And actually it can come up between the two trees. That actually makes it look a little bit more believable. Now this tree is way too big. I think we've got two strong dominant ones, so I'm going to thin this one down quite a bit. I just think it's way too big.
Will you zoom out a little bit?
Oh, sure. I was saying this one's too big. Okay, I want to show you a technique. I just went over a spot that I shouldn't have. So I'm going to show you how to use a brush that's clean, and you want to just come back in and go back down to the first layer. So you can just lift it just like that. Okay. But what I was saying is this is just too big of a tree. I want this one to be the dominant one. So this one was so much fatter. So I'm making it skinnier. That makes sense? And see over here, I need to get more. That's really blue. I'm trying to define this one that's coming across. And I think it's looks like it's gonna come out this way. We're going to find our first pass will lighten up as it dries. And so we'll need to go back with a second coat and make it quite a bit darker. So go ahead and you see I'm just like there's a little tree behind it. Oop. Okay. Okay, so back in here, I'm going to come back in. Just anywhere you see that you want to add some trees, you can do some edges. You guys see that one that I pulled through here? Okay, so my tree right here looks like it's getting bigger as it goes up. So I either have to make like split it in two, like put a V right there to make it go off. And I think that's what I like to do most often, or I need to make it thinner and just go off the page. I think bringing a V in gives it a little bit more character. So I'm going to come in and at some point it just splits. That is a funny color. Okay. Now you can go over different areas again that you see that are too light. And at this point, what we'd like to do, we're not worrying about this side at all. We're just concentrating right in here. So right now we're going to start painting the tree, okay? We want to make it three-dimensional. We want it to have a curve to it. So to do that, we add shadows on, there's going to be a light side that the light's hitting it, and then an opposite side that has the dark. Now mine's going to be over here, and I'm just going to take my purple and brown together, but not mixed very well, and I'm just going to start shading this side of the tree. And I can even mix it with my brown and a little bit of water. And we don't want, again, we don't want a solid, you want to just do little brush strokes.
So you're actually painting on top of the tree that we outlined?
Uh-huh. I'm going to be shading it. Now, there's this thing where you can go back and you can, if it's a little too thick, you can dab it up and get that line a little bit softer. And I don't know, you can see I'm going to be going along here and making a root that goes all the way down. Okay. So let's look back at these trees. So remember, this was my main one. You can see where I left the pink and red and all that. I put some green shrubs down at the bottom. This tree goes behind it, but I've got shadows everywhere. And then we're going to be adding green leaves on everything. So don't be discouraged. Our next step is to put the leaves on the whole thing, and that will help. But see, we're just trying to get this shadow where we've got purples and browns and woods, and then a dark line underneath. We're trying to define our trees, and to do that, you use just kind of one side, you pick a side that the light is coming from, and then the opposite side, you're going to just put a darker line. Can you see that? So then I would need to take this brown. up into here and start painting that. Okay, we just want to make it look okay. And then off of this, you can also go like this and go out from there. And you can see that it can go off. Okay. Okay, so then we can go and do a little line of brown on this side of the tree. And see, we're making roots with splashes. So your guys is going to look different because your trees are going to look different, but you get the same idea that as the tree, as you work on the tree, especially down in the background, we're going to leave a lot of it white. There's a lot of white on my page over here in the bottom and in the corner. So it's really kind of floating up and into the outer edges. Okay, so I've kind of identified this one tree and kind of singled it out, drew the branches. And then we're going to go onto this, onto another tree, okay? And then we'll do our greenery. So again, I'm going to do some brown on this tree. And you don't want it solid. Yeah, so you can, I'm just dabbing purple, brown, yellow, orange, and the red that we used. If you stay in those groups, you'll be fine. You want to stay away from black. Black's hardly ever, true black is hardly ever found, you know, as a stark black paint. You want to always create your black. Now I'm going to lift some of that yellow because I don't like that yellow right there. I'm just scooping down and then dabbing it off. So can you see how I've kind of identified that second tree? Can you see that second tree? This is way too white right there. So I'm going to go back and fill that in. You can lift. It's probably a lot harder to see. There's truly a shadow over, like there's one side that's darker, like this one's darker.
Okay.
This side of the tree is dark. But to make a rounded effect, you have to have a thin little line of the dark on this side. And then in the middle, you can pick it up. But again, it's a tree and it's going to be dappled with shadow. And so you don't have to have a solid white, if that makes sense. You just want it to be like up here. Up here, it's kind of white. because the light's coming through and hitting that. So over here on this tree, this side is much lighter than this side. This side's really dark, this side's light, but you still have to have a line of dark, a thin line right here.
Yeah.
To make that curve, if that makes sense. Okay. Then after we're done with another tree, then we're going to do our leaves, okay? So our leaves will be in a mixture of the bright green, but right now I'm going to just fill this in just a little bit more. It's a little bit too light. Now, because it's laying this way, my center of light is going to be right about in the middle and up on top. So most of my dark is going to be down on the bottom. I'll work on the root part. You guys can see this root part coming out. And again, yours is just going to be very different because you have different splatters and you're working with. And so whatever part yours works. So you could take this up off to the top. I'm leaving it though because we're going to get some other trees in here. Okay, so let's go back and we're going to do some leaves now. So if you look back at my original, we've got leaves that are dappled on, and even in the background, a lot of dappling. And it is the bright green, and that gives us the nice foliage. And that can go over the trunks and everywhere, because we want it to look like the branches are hanging down from the tree. So let me just get started, and then you guys can ask me questions about it. So I'm going to use my bright green. I'm going to just use it plain because we can always go darker later. So I'm just going to just drop it. Just twist my brush. What it's going to do is pop. It's going to make everything pop. When I get over into this white area, I'm especially going to be conscious to make it look like leaves. I want this shape to look like pointy green leaves. Now on top of this bright green, we're going to be adding the darker green, a Kelly green. Now, not the blue green. We're going to take this green and mix it with some ultramarine blue to make it more forest green. So to do that, and on your dots, you may have different colors of green. There should be sap green, all sorts of greens. Okay, see how that just darkens that up? Just by adding a little bit of blue. And then we're going to go ahead and tap over some of that green, some of the leaves that we've already done. And it adds variety. Okay, do you see how this green really defines, it really anchors that bright green? It really kind of settles it. if you've got, I'm going to switch brushes and just show you. If you have a thin little brush called a rigger brush, see how, can you guys see the paintbrush? It's long and it's thin. And it is a real, this was a really fine one. I'm going to show you how that works in doing some grasses. It's just beautiful. So can you see that right there? It just does beautiful grasses. So that's with the rigger brush. Now, the other thing you can do with the rigger brush is make some really nice branches. And we'll do that with the other side over here, but let me just show you one. Oops, I just dropped that brown. That's gonna be a brown. So I can go and make a branch that just looks like a tree branch. You see that? It's just, anyway, it's a good investment to do a small little brush like that. It's called the rigger brush. If you don't have something like that, then you want to get to your sharpest point and just put the paint right in there at that point. And see, I could almost achieve the same thing by just having a light touch with my paintbrush. Not quite, but you get the same idea. Okay. So, okay, I think we can move on to this section now. We've got 3 more trees to identify. So you guys can, you take out your pencil again, and either you use your shapes or you just pretend. So now that I've started some branches up here, I'm just going to actually connect it. And I'm going to, well, although that looks like a branch right there. So maybe my tree is going to come down here. And we're going to find 3 more trees that we need to do. You guys see my pencil lines? No, I'm going to go darker. Now, usually I don't draw that dark on my paintings. And I'm going to take this across over here and just leave that. Do you see how I ended that? I just skipped that white part for now. I'm going to go up into this area because I like that. So let's just identify just the last trees over here, and we can go ahead and start finishing that. Okay. So this side, let me just show you the example. We're going to keep it lighter. We're going to use ultramarine blue in the middle now, and just use keep some of the whites. So it's like at the edge of the forest, basically. It's not so much negative painting, except that we're filling it in behind. Okay, so where's my brush? There we go. I'm going to take my ultramarine blue, just the blue, and we're going to just start just making some dabbles in between the trees. We're going to keep the branches that come across from other areas. And I can also, what I can also do is wet that and lift it in places. So it's not a flat, solid blue. It actually is in different shades. Okay, so I've got my 3 trees, but this side needs to be defined a little. Okay, now I need to add my trunk color, and it's a very purpley brown, variegated. There's some orange and yellows. We're keeping these trees a little bit lighter because they're over in the sunshine a little bit more. So I'm going to start with my lightest color, which is the yellow, and see where that takes me. Okay, so now you asked about the bottom. Okay, so you can go ahead and we're going to use kind of a gray. So I would do kind of a, let's see, what have we mixed in here? A blue, a bluish gray, and you're going to just do some lines that ground those trees. Now it could be still pretty bright in here, maybe not all the sun is not hitting it all. So in fact, I could use some of this dark on the shading behind this tree, because it's getting shaded by that other tree. So I'm going to bring that line of, and then I'm also going to bring it down here. It's getting shaded by that other tree. Again, I think we're ready to pull some of this blue and make some branches. So now you can kind of look at your whole picture, and somehow you're going to try to, now I've got this little light section that something's wrong right there, but I want light to come through. This is a big negative space, but yeah, that I love that pink that's coming through in spots, like you're seeing through the forest. So in order to enhance that, I think I'm going to paint more of the negative. And actually do kind of a green shrubby thing at the bottom. And you can just kind of pounce a green bush into shape. I'm going to take a really strong green and a blue together. See how dark that is? I'm just going to do, let's see, where will I do it? I'm going to do it over here. So I don't like this area right there. So by making a shrub, I kind of camouflage that. I kind of grounded the trees by doing something like that. And then we need to add some dark greens to, we did our light green, but we haven't done our dark greens up here. So thanks for joining us tonight. I hope that you had some trees. We all had a good experience with it. We all learned something for sure about negative painting, about lifting, about blowing watercolor and doing layers. So we actually put down our foundation layer and we're putting it on top. So thanks for joining us and hope we'll see you next month.